Okay, so I'm here with my good buddy and colleague, Michael Rusnak, and we're here to do and start our very first podcast, and it has to do with everything Porsche. We're just going to be talking about things that are maybe new in the Porsche world, and things that we find exciting, maybe upcoming things that we think about. But first, I want to introduce myself, and then I'll give Mike a chance to introduce himself as well. So my name is Mason Gilchrist. I've been with the Porsche brand since about 2015. First, I was in service. I did that for a while. Then I moved over to sales, as I always like to challenge myself and kind of learn that part of the business. I just love Porsche. Have been with Porsche for about 9 years. And in my free time, I read as much as I can and learn as much as I can to try to be just a Porsche fanatic and nut, as we're always learning and it never stops. So that's just kind of a quick background about me and how I got into Porsche. Is that my dad always was a big lover of cars, and in 2012, when I was in college, he purchased his first Porsche.
Yeah, that's our car. That's a joke. Oh, it's not a joke. That's our...
It was a lifelong dream, and that gave me the bug, so I continued off with my degree, ended up getting my degree in kinesiology, but went straight to Porsche, as that's my true love. So that's kind of a quick background on who I am and how I got into Porsche. Mike?
So question on that.
Yeah.
So did you know that you wanted to be a physical therapist or something? Is that why you were already in college for kinesiology?
Yes. So I loved to work out when I was in college, and I figured I want to be a physical therapist because that kind of goes hand in hand with something I love, but it was only more of a love, not a passion. So that's the reason I decided to go.
And so as far as Porsche goes, were you into Porsches at all before that time? Is it because of your dad having that life?
Good question. So I was more into just cars in general. My first car was a Volvo S40. So I loved cars.
Is that by choice or donation?
So my family was a Volvo family, and that's all we had. It was just Volvos. So I figured I'll get a Volvo as well. So that was my very first car. Kind of pimped it out, put some cool wheels and a sound system and whatnot inside it. But I've always kind of liked Ferraris before that, maybe a Lambo guy. I remember like looking at the Road and Track from 2003 when the Murcielago came out.
Right.
So I would say Porsche was more of a college love when my dad got his car, and then I dove deep and started absolutely loving it. So
when your dad got that car, what car was that he got?
2007 Cayman S.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So when he got that car, did you know he was looking for it?
I knew he kind of loved Porsches, but he surprised me, and I had no idea they had already purchased it. We went to the Porsche store during one of my holiday breaks, and it happened to be his new car. So I was like freaking out. And after that, it kind of set the passion on fire.
Like looking into Porsches and stuff because your dad had them.
Exactly. Okay. So that got me hooked. I've always been a car guy, but now I'm just Porsche.
Right. Oh, all right. Well,
so,
interesting.
yeah.
Well, Mike Rusnak, and my history with Porsche is when I was a kid, probably 7 or 8 years old, my dad wanted to buy a 911, like a 73 911, I believe it was. He was trying to convince my mom that this was a practical car because you could actually seat 4 people in it. And my mom wasn't buying it. She wanted something big and reliable. So he bent to her wishes, and he got a 77 Caprice Classic. Was the car that he ended up buying because that's the car that she wanted. So, but that's which got me started into even noticing what a Porsche was. During those formative years through grade school, high school, I would be drawing Porsches a lot. I would try to get the 911 shape as close as I could in high school because I was in drafting class, and I used all the tools in drafting to try to draw the car as close as I could. It was a very difficult to get right with the proportions. I can't imagine trying to design that from scratch, how much thought went into trying to get all the proportions correctly, especially with the 911. So that was my introduction to it. with the advent or with the show Magnum PI, when that came out with the Ferrari 308, I was like, oh, this is such a beautiful car. And from that age, I was really into Ferraris all up until I would say up until about 2011. I was a big Formula One fan. I would always be rooting for Ferrari. And up until about 2011, when Luca de Montezemolo left, I was a Ferrari guy. Then after he left, I started noticing the 991s. I thought that was a really well done revision of that classic 911. So that's when I started getting back into Porsches again. So 2 years down the road, I was able to parlay that love of the car into a job at the same dealership that Mason works at, and that's how we've kind of become friends at the store and get to bounce and talk about Porsches all the time to each other at work. So we figured this would be a good opportunity for us to just jaw and talk the way we do at work about Porsches here in a podcast setting.
For sure. Now, in terms of with Mike, he's very, very talented when it comes to his hands and drawing, and he works with gold. So do you want to talk maybe about how you, like those little pins that you have and that you've made and kind of like the rules of proportions? You want to talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's always pretty fascinating.
When I was a kid, I thought whenever my dad was into, I'd always have to draw it. So when he was into football, I'd be drawing football players. When he went to race car driving school, so I was always drive the race car that he was learning in. And so here I came from a background in dental technology, so it's always making small things with my hands. So naturally, I had to try to manipulate gold into Porsches. So I have a good dozen of little Porsche cars, cufflinks and tie pins and lapel pins and stuff like that. So that was fun.
Those are awesome, by the way. We'll show one up here on the screen so you guys can check one out. But he's very, very talented when it comes to that. Mm-hmm. So do you want to talk about maybe some of the news and some of the stuff that we saw and maybe some recent things like the Macan EV and maybe what your thoughts are on that, or the new Taycan? Mm-hmm. What's that going to do to the previous Taycan?
Yeah, I figured probably start with the oldest news and work our way to the newest. Okay. And I think the first thing is the new 24 Cayenne that is now out and about. And I think that it's come across very well. We were kind of concerned when it just came out because it seemed like the build quality went in a different way than we thought it was going to go. Yes. But the public is all over it. Everybody loves the 24 Macan, or by and large, everybody loves the 24 Cayenne.
Yes, I would say for those of you who haven't had a chance to drive a 24 Cayenne, drastically different than the previous generation in terms of now PASM is standard. They increased the tire size. So the car feels way more plush than it previously did, but it still has that classic Porsche characteristics where it's very nimble on its feet, still has plenty of acceleration. And something else that was very exciting that finally came back was the V8 for the Cayenne S. Yep. So a lot of us missed that for a long time as Porsche kind of got rid of it in the S starting in 2016, and now we finally brought it back for 2024. So pretty exciting stuff. What are your thoughts on the new Cayenne, like in terms of how it drives?
Yeah, I agree. Especially taking people out in test drives, a lot of people are very impressed with the ride and the drive quality of the car. And I totally agree with you. They have improved that. It's a nicer car to drive.
Sure.
And people love it, especially with the V8. A lot of people are asking about the GTS. When's the GTS coming out? Because they can imagine what that's going to be like with the V8, like the S. Because the S with the sport exhaust sounds like incredible. I mean, you just want to sit out there and just blip it in the parking lot and hear the pops and crackles. Sounds really good.
For sure.
So it's definitely a popular car.
And I guess we didn't mention this, but Mike is actually a Porsche Pro at our store. He sold cars for a little while, got his feet wet with that, and now he's the Porsche nut at our store. So he kind of is the go-to guy. If anybody has any questions, they go to Mike. He helps them set up their Porsche ID, or maybe he goes through like deliveries for those of you who aren't aware of what a Porsche Pro is. So he's got quite a bit of experience when it comes to that. So
So what's after that? Then then I guess the Macan EV is the next one, right? Or
Macan-
is Panamera next?
Panamera would have been next.
Panamera got released first.
Yes,
Okay.
which we're still yet to see those. Probably won't see those until May or June. So I guess it's going to depend on what happens.
We do have allocations for that, or are they all gone already?
We do. We do have allocations. We just haven't seen them yet. It's going to be, they're saying May as of right now. It'll be interesting to see how long it ends up taking.
Are we going to get one before we get new cars in to sell?
Are we going to get one in before we get new cars to sell?
Like, in other words, you know how we're going to get some Macan EVs in as demos? Are we going to get a Panamera in as a demo?
No demos. Yeah, they're just all going to be coming to the store. The only car that I'm aware of that each Porsche store is getting is one Macan 4 EV demo and one Macan Turbo demo. So
that's right, because of the EV platform.
Yes,
I would Panamera. Yeah,
exactly. So it's quite a bit different.
It still will be cool though, and with the active ride and stuff, and the Panamera to learn how that works before we start showing it to people.
I'm excited about that, so we can test that out. Almost feels like those guys that used to have those lowriders where they can bounce the cars.
Did you hear a rumor that they're saying that if you do a software tweak on that, you could actually get the car to jump? It has enough strength to get the wheels off.
I didn't hear that.
I've
That's
seen other
crazy.
videos of people commenting that people can software hack that so that to get the car to jump up and down.
That's incredible.
Oh, what that would do to the warranty.
Boing, 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 boing. I love it. So
that would be cool.
Yeah, so those are set, like I said, for May. We'll see if they end up coming in. I guess the biggest news kind of that we've had before we get into the Macan EV is this latest kind of impound of some Porsches at all the U.S. ports. It said that there's chips that, I guess in 2021, there was some kind of sanction where we weren't supposed to be able to import chips from certain regions of the world. One of those is Belarus. Turns out one of Porsche manufacturers for the chips for the ECU is chips come from Belarus. So now there's a lot of cars that are sitting at a lot of the ports here, and we're supposed to have some kind of relief by April, but they've been impounded by the U.S. government because we can't release those cars. So the only cars that are kind of getting a pass and aren't apparently having chips from Belarus is the Macan as well as the 718. Everything else is virtually on hold until April. I'm hoping that's going to be the case, as they need to find a new chip supplier, make new chips, and install them in the cars by April. I feel like that's a pretty fast timeline, so we'll end up seeing what happens with that. But that's
is this because of the war tied with Russia?
I think so. I believe so. I think it's because of the war. I also heard there was a rumor maybe something with China as well with some of these chips. We're just not supposed to be importing. It's only a U.S. law, so all the rest of the world will not be affected. But of course, we're affected, and we may run out of cars here in the short term just because we're not getting any new inventory. Maybe only Macan and only 718. So that'll be interesting. So for those of you who are waiting for your cars, hopefully it's April, maybe a little bit longer. It'll just depend on how quickly Porsche can remedy this issue with the chips. So.
And is Porsche reaching out to the customers, letting them know why their car is at port and waiting?
I've been told that they've sent a letter to them, but they haven't really told them the full story as to why the cars are being delayed. So
just that they're delayed.
Yeah, that they're just delayed. We don't have any ETA. Like I said, they're saying April, but I don't know if all the customers know that this is the actual issue. It's all public at this point, so this isn't any kind of hidden information that we can't be sharing, but that's the latest and greatest in terms of that news, which is pretty fascinating.
Interesting.
So we're back to the chips. We had chip shortages. Now we're to chips where they're not supposed to be from, which is strange. So hopefully they get it remedied fast.
So while we're on the Panamera, were we talking about the Panamera or the Macan?
We were talking about Panamera. We were talking about the Active Ride.
So we might as well talk about the two new models that were released today.
Yeah, so today Porsche released. So before we had Panamera, Panamera 4, Panamera Turbo E Hybrid, which was like the most powerful Panamera ever produced. Now today Porsche just released the Panamera 4 e-hybrid as well as the Panamera 4S e-hybrid. Price points, we're looking at about $115 for the Panamera 4 e-hybrid and $126 for the Panamera 4S e-hybrid. I feel like this is a fantastic option if you're not ready to go all electric. Cars have plenty of torque and are very quick. You can get about 40 miles on the full electric mode. So I think it's a great alternative for those of you who maybe don't want to dive into a Taycan or even a Macan EV just yet, and you want to have a Panamera e-hybrid. So we're very excited that Porsche has increased the Panamera lineup. If you were to get a Panamera, Mike, which Panamera do you think it would be?
Okay. Yeah, it would definitely be a hybrid.
Okay.
I think the same thing for a Cayenne. I'd
agree.
have to go hybrid as well, just for that ability to do daily, go get milk and bread at the store, all electric mode.
Yes.
In that, you said 40 miles of electric range. Is that a Porsche 40 miles? Or is that like a conservative estimate? Or is that like you should be, no problem, 40 miles?
That I would say is a pretty kind of real world test. I would say that's more of a Porsche test, but as you know, they're always conservative, so maybe it'll be more.
Right.
So that'll be.
What was it on the previous one?
Previous one, I think they said you were supposed to get like 26, but people didn't quite get that many. They were a little bit less, probably low 20s.
Oh, okay.
So they've increased it. Battery size is now 25.9 kilowatt hours, which is about a quarter of the new Macan battery size, just for comparison. So on the Macan, it's on the floor. On the Panamera, it's in the bottom of the rear trunk. So it's a pretty big battery back there, but a lot of good range now. So that's good.
And so speaking of range, you have a kick up in range in both the Macan EV and the Taycan now. And both have greatly improved their range. What do you think that's going to do to current Taycan sales?
Yeah, I think that may hinder the Taycan sales here for the cars that are sitting, because a lot of people when the car first came out, they were talking about range. EPA came out with some range numbers right at the beginning saying low 200s. I think it was 203 or something like that. Everybody was like, oh my God, that's very low considering Tesla. They always say it's well over 300. Now, if that actually gets that, that's a whole other story. But now I think it probably is going to hinder the current Taycan sitting on the lots, just because those cars max, you're probably getting 260, 280, max 300 miles, depending on the variant and the size of the battery. So.
And if you drive it like a Porsche, you're getting
a lot.
Yeah.
You're getting even less than that. Yeah. So now with the new Taycan, they're stating like 360, I think, range, which is incredible. So that's quite a bit more than the previous generation. So just kind of to your point, I think the value and maybe the take rate on those Taycans that are sitting at some of these Porsche stores is going to be maybe a little bit hard pressed to get rid of some of those, as those are kind of, I want to say outdated at this point, but from a range perspective, nothing they're not even close to what these new cars are going to get. So,
Or do you